I am talking about the next book in my 2023 reading challenge. The one I did was Hokuloa Road by Elizabeth Hand. Um, and the challenge that I'm going to put this under um, is features mythology. I mean, it's not quite exactly what it is, but you know, I mean, I didn't make up these prompts, and I didn't actually like all these books that I'm reading so far this year. I actually got them last year, and I'm just reading them now before I even knew what the challenge was going to be. I actually thought, oh, this is great because it takes place on an island. Isn't that? No, not quite. Um, I thought takes place on an island was not one of my things. That's actually two island references, but not takes place on an island. Anyway, so this book, Elizabeth Hand, I've never read anything by her before. Um, she's a British author that supposedly spends time in Maine, a lot of time in Maine, which is where I live. This book is about a person from Maine, and the descriptions of what happens in Maine, I mean, it's fictionalized. It's fictionalized. Um, anyway, who takes a job in Hawaii. And also just happens to be while this person was in Hawaii that there are a number of people that go missing, including some that he knew, briefly because he's gone there for the first time. Anyway, but he's very interested in sort of trying to find out what's happening with them. This is another book that takes place in the pandemic, which, I mean, yes, that happened, but I don't know. I mean, it's also a fish out of water because, again, this character had never been to this place and he took a job and that's what he's doing. I think that both of those tropes, I mean, they meshed really well with the story. It was put, it's just, I mean, it was like masks were constantly brought up in this book. And I'm not anti-mask or anything like that. It's more like I really don't like Deus ex machina type interventions where you have a story that you could have written and it would have been a little bit more difficult without leaning on the crutch of this bizarre, I mean, it's people are going to be using this pandemic time to get out of actually working through some difficulties in their plot forever now. And it's like, oh, come on. Couldn't you just try that just a little bit more? And it's, of course, going to date this book tremendously. And that's too bad because it actually, of the ones I've read so far this year, I would say this one I would recommend the most. I mean, I would just straight up recommend it. Not for everybody, obviously, but it's a yarn. It as a story, it just goes and goes and it keeps going. I'm not like this is an absolute top tier novel, one of the year or two that I would read and think it's the most spectacular thing. But I would really say, yeah, this one is worth reading. Um, the mythology is, and again, these are my reservations. Um, there's like this invented area in Hawaii, totally made up, totally made up mythologies that are based on actual Hawaiian stories. The problem is that they're not just stories to the people that live there and to Native Hawaiians currently. So it's like fooling around with that as a trope again, as like a like it was done really well. Um, but I the entire time I was reading this, I was like, is this something that you should be playing with, making up? parts of this country, making up, you know, and entirely, it was all constructed entirely for the story, which is why I would almost give it a pass, but really it's something that, you know, you, it's not like just adding another road in the middle of London or something like that. I mean, so there were a lot of sort of like, wouldn't it be great if this happened, and that sort of thing, and I can feel that strongly. Like all of a sudden there were extinct animals that are extinct that appeared in this area of the world that doesn't actually exist. I mean, okay, I get that. Um, but what I was very, very impressed at, like I was reading it going, wow, this is actually really working. There's literary theory called the fantastique, which is sort of um, the start of all horror novels. Like they're baby horror novels, how they ever existed, besides like, you know, Grimm's fairy tales and all that, which is when you're reading a novel, you are really right on the line between trying to figure out as you're reading. I mean, it's a really good technique to get people engaged in the reading process and really participate in reading. It's great. But you're right on that line between trying to decide, is this going to have a completely logical in our world explanation, or is there some kind of supernatural explanation for what is happening, and there's something that we just don't know, or a myth or a story from the past that is going to turn up as the explanation for whatever is happening. Um, and you're right on that line. I mean, the writer that I've personally read in the past, again, problematic, that really, really got it down was Lovecraft. I don't remember another contemporary book. And I mean, yep, I've read Stephen King and I've read this and that. It's like they give away the game way too early. This book, you're really questioning. You're really questioning, what is it? What is the answer going to be? Is it that these Hawaiian stories about creatures, are they really out there, or is it something else? Um, and what is it if it's not what it really seems to be, which is that, you know, not only are extinct creatures alive, but mythological ones are alive as well. I mean, it's really done well. So, um, and again, it's a yarn. It's got characters that are really interesting, and that you'd want to get to know, and be interested in what's going to happen next to them. A little repetitive, um, hmm, you know. And again, that was sort of because of being set in a pandemic. People couldn't really interact with each other. There weren't a lot of places people could go. So yeah, that's the problem when you do something like that. So it did seem like, okay, did we just talk about this a little bit ago? Oh, it's happening again. It's happening again. But that was the pandemic. That's what you did all the time, was the same thing over and over and over again. So again, I would recommend this book. And I'm glad I read it. And I did have issues with it, but you know, I don't I don't know many books that I wouldn't have issues with. And actually, most of the books that I've read that I don't have any issues with are YA or even younger. Um, so, anyway, that's my review.